Welcome to Environmental Justice. This channel is dedicated to providing everyone with a comprehensive, practical approach to your own personal environment. We're going to be doing that by asking questions and having you find out the answers and protecting you and your family. We all fantasize that there's a higher power that creates, maintains pure water for us. Our federal government sets safe drinking water standards and then proceeds to enforce these standards in our states. Adds more standards to respond to regional anomalies, and then the local boards of health regulate, monitor, and enforce site-specific drinking water standards. Wouldn't that be special? That's what we are made to believe. However, this entire top-down reverse pyramid of authority, responsibility, and obligation is a myth. And this is why we need a bottoms-up approach. And this begins with you. So let's begin by exposing a few myths. The first is the term safe drinking water standards. This is hilarious. I mean, people actually think this country has safe drinking water standards. Well, actually, it's not the case, because you would assume that safe drinking water standards means that if you adhere to these standards, your water's safe. That's not true. These standards are negotiated thresholds based on political concepts of acceptable risks. Think about that. This isn't a bunch of scientists and public health experts sitting around determining how do we make some standards that will make sure that everybody is safe and drinking safe drinking water. Oh no, that ain't it. These standards are set by determining how many pathogens and carcinogens will result in how many cases of cancer and what is the acceptable level of the number of cancers in a specific but arbitrary population. And to make matters worse, these standards and regulations are managed and manipulated by private companies and the products and byproducts that are created through their manufacturing process. So lobbyists and special interest groups work behind the scenes to manipulate the people that create these standards so that these standards have an acceptable amount of the pathogens and carcinogens that these companies create. Or just pick up today's New York Post, where they report on the schools of Brooklyn. They finally published some reports about the drinking water in their school system, and they found out that an average of 15 parts per billion of lead is coming out of the water fountains. 15 parts per billion of lead. The students have organized themselves and are now setting up fundraising activities to collect the money necessary to correct the problem. But after all of this has been made public and the issue now of 15 parts per billion of lead is not even being challenged, the chancellor of the Brooklyn school system just announced that the water is safe and there's nothing to worry about. The sad question is, how long have these students been drinking this water? How much damage has occurred to their neurological systems? What other illnesses occurred caused by ingesting the water in the school's water fountains? And where has this been going on? Government agencies, including boards of health and other health agencies, including environmental organizations, have known about this for years and have done nothing. The sad truth is that you have to take on your own personal responsibility for your own health, your children's health, and that starts with clean water. This is shameful. The government agencies, our institutions, our media are all there to protect us and making sure that all of these things are handled safely and properly. For example, there are many government buildings, including the Pentagon, including the congressional office buildings, that have strict restrictions making sure that nobody drinks the water. They have to have truckload after truckload bringing bottled water to these buildings every day. This is in our nation's capital, but the people who live there, all the people who have homes and drink this water every day, bathe with it every day, are not told that the people in the office buildings can't drink the city's water. What are the health agencies doing? What is the media doing? We've done a terrible job in protecting our water. It's one thing to pollute our water. It's another thing to have our government officials lie to us about it. We've all heard of the reports out of Flint, Michigan. All the lead in the water up there in the school system and their homes was terrible. What happened to the people of Flint, Michigan is despicable. The authorities of that part of Michigan thought it would be a good idea, in order to save money, to change the source of water to the people of Flint, Michigan from Lake Huron and the Detroit River to the Flint River. This occurred in April of 2014. And immediately after making this change, people in Flint, Michigan started to complain about the taste and the color of their water. The public health agencies did their tests and said there was no problem with the water. The people continued to complain. It wasn't until almost a year and a half later that a General Motors parts plant observed that the water that they were using from the Flint River to wash engine parts were causing corrosion in the metal. While that was happening, the students in the school system of Flint, Michigan started to get lower and lower grades. They did all kinds of studies and couldn't figure out why the school kids in Flint, Michigan had their test scores going down dramatically. Someone thought it might have been biological or neurological. So they took some cell samples and found out that the kids in the school system of Flint, Michigan had very high levels of lead in their system. This was unbelievable. The first national coverage of this was on the Rachel Maddow show in December of 2015, well over a year and a half later. Amazing. Unfortunately, Rachel Maddow didn't stay with the story long enough or drill deep enough or wide enough, because if they did, they would find out there were more problems with the water in Flint, Michigan. First of all, everybody found out that the independent laboratory, the testing company that came out with that report that the water was fine, was actually from a company from France. And after some study, they found out that the French company said that they were directed by the authorities in Flint, Michigan, not to look for lead. So for all that time, the people of Flint, Michigan were being poisoned by the lead in the water from the Flint River, and the authorities were telling me it was fine. Remember that lead is a carcinogen, it's a heavy metal, and it stays in your body forever. It doesn't flow through like vitamin C and other things you take into your body, in a couple of days they're gone. Lead's accumulative. Keep on taking it, it stays in your body and it causes neurological harm. And that's what happened to the people of Flint, Michigan. But wait, somebody thought it would be a great idea to treat the water with chlorine, because that would actually make the water better. In fact, it made the water worse. When the chlorine reacted to what was in the water in the first place, it resulted in the creation of trihalomethanes, which are a carcinogen, which is not what you want to be drinking every day. You know, it's nice to know that some of these people are finally going to jail. One of them for involuntary manslaughter. These people lied. These people allowed poisons to go into people's bodies and did nothing about it. The authorities knew that the water was bad, and they did nothing to stop it. You haven't heard too much about the water in Flint, Michigan lately, and you might think that, well, because we don't hear anything about it, that the water's gotten better. Actually, that's not the case. If you remember, one of the solutions was to bring bottled water to all the people there. It's very expensive, very cumbersome, and because of the microplastic problems in water bottles, it creates other problems. So they decided to give out all these activated charcoal cartridges. You saw things like that on television where they screw these things into the kitchen faucet. Yeah, that's not a good idea either, because activated charcoal does not filter out lead to a safe level. And if you go back and look at some of the news shows back then, when people were taking their bottled water and having demonstrations and showing videos of this brown ooze coming out of their kitchen faucets. Yeah, the problem with that is that lead is a tasteless and colorless heavy metal, which means where was all that brown goo coming from? There was something else in the water. And there are some more fun facts about this whole entire situation. And that is, after meeting with the people from the EPA, we were informed that there is an imminent report coming out which will show the 10 worst cities in America with lead in their drinking water. Now let's stop right there. What do they mean, the 10 worst cities in America with lead in their drinking water? I thought they should say the 10 cities, not the 10 worst cities. Well, it turns out there's a lot of cities that have lead in their drinking water throughout the country. And remember, there's no safe level for lead. None. So what are we talking about here? Well, it turns out that even though Flint, Michigan is in the top 10, it's not the worst. That's right. There are several cities in this country that have more lead in their water than they found in Flint, Michigan. And it's now many, many months after we met with the EPA in March of 2018, and they still haven't released this report. I don't know if we're witnessing mass suicide or what's going on here, but the most important thing you have to do is make sure that your drinking water is safe. And it's your responsibility to make sure that this happens. Let's face it, you may think that you don't live in a city and you'll be fine. You drink bottled water, everything's good, but you can pick up the paper any day and find out that there's another area with contaminated water. Detroit, yeah. Detroit, Michigan, they found lead in 106 of their elementary schools. But there's another Detroit out there. It's called Detroit Lake. Actually, it's a reservoir, and it's a source of drinking water for the people of Salem, Oregon. Oregon. Everybody thinks of Oregon as a beautiful place, all green, all made up of people who care about the environment. They're all very concerned. They work hard. I don't know what they do there, but every time I think of Oregon, it's just a beautiful, clean place. Not heavily industrialized. Again, people who care about the air they breathe and the water they drink. Unfortunately, the people of Salem, Oregon, were informed they couldn't drink the water. Their drinking water was contaminated with cyanotoxins. Cyanotoxins sounds pretty lethal, huh? But it's blue-green algae. The same crap that we have in Lake Okeechobee and being discharged down the St. Lucie River and the Caloosahatchee River. But in Salem, Oregon, yeah, cyanotoxins, green algae, is caused by too many nutrients going into the water source, mostly from farms. This blue-green algae problem that we've seen in South Florida and also in Salem, Oregon, is prevalent throughout the United States. A lot in the Midwest farm areas, but also throughout the Great Lakes. So contamination and pollution is being found in a whole lot of places in the United States and a lot of places you wouldn't think of. Maryland and Delaware have now just reported that they found lead in the water there. What is amazing is that the head of their state health bureau, a guy by the name of Clifford Mitchell, when we contacted the Environmental Health Bureau of the state of Maryland and we wanted to receive a printout of the water quality analysis, the state of Maryland director of Environmental Health Bureau said that they don't test for lead. The state does not collect data on lead in drinking water. That's just amazing. But not enough for you? Well, if you go to a place called Texas, right, and you go to the places that are rural Texas, where there's not a lot of people, especially North Texas, has the most concentrated contaminated water in the country. And this is not private wells. This is coming from a municipal source. So we just have to simply ask you, what's in your water? So let's put this in perspective. Number one, we know that the safe drinking water standards are not meant to ensure that your water is safe to drink. Number two, we know that the problem is acute throughout the country, with water quality results far worse than the federal drinking water standards. And three, we know that many government agencies, for whatever reason, have not been forthcoming in notifying the people that there is a problem. The first thing to do, of course, is what many people have started already, and that is to only drink bottled water. Make sure you do your research to ensure that the bottling company that you use has proven standards that are acceptable to you and your family. But the most important thing you must do is take a water quality test of the water that your family comes in contact with every day. The water that you bathe in, shower in, prepare your food with, brush your teeth with, you have to have that tested. In fact, people like to take hot showers and hot baths, but that atomizes some of these carcinogens and pathogens, and you will breathe it in. So to complete a water quality test, you will need to find a water quality testing laboratory online. They will send you a test kit that you can easily take a water sample from any tap in your house. You must read and comply with the instructions carefully. You'll be required to repackage the sample in the box and send it back to the lab, and you'll get your results back in a few days. You must do this yourself, and just because your neighbor has results that are okay doesn't mean that your water's okay, because one of the biggest problems we have in this country is the pipes within a home that make the water worse. You should also insist that the school that your children go to have their water tested, and that goes for offices and churches and any other place where people congregate and use water. So this is where your work starts. You have to roll up your sleeves and really get involved in water quality sampling. You have to take the water quality sample, you have to take it to a lab, and you have to look at the results. You have to find out exactly what they're testing for. Not just lead, not just organic compounds. You have to test for the exotics. You have to test for perfluorooctanic acid, PFOA, PFOS. These are the wonderful chemical compounds that were created to protect clothes, things like Scotchgard and all those chemicals. Wonderful things. Unfortunately, once it gets released into the water system, you can't get them out very easily, and there's significant harm being done to the human condition. Be skeptical of your utilities, of your government, of your environmental organizations. Find out the facts for yourself. Be skeptical of us. Check out everything. Make sure that the water that's coming into your home and office is safe. And the only way to do that is if you do it yourself. You've been warned. You must learn the lesson of Flint. and other areas where they cover up the fact that your drinking water is toxic. If you run into any roadblocks or you're distracted by some false information, please contact us here. We'll steer you in the right direction. The first thing you have to do is to realize that we're in a drinking water crisis in this country and around the world. The lack of fresh, safe water causes mass migrations, sickness, epidemics. It's getting worse. The frustration here is that this is not new. It's been going on for years. What's everybody been doing? All the people of our government agencies and environmental organizations been doing. Unfortunately, they've been going to Earth Day rallies and conferences for climate change, which are all worthwhile, important things to do. But it just consumed everybody's attention. Case in point, go back and watch some of the news shows in Flint, Michigan and other parts of Michigan during the latter part of 2014, early 2015. They weren't talking about water quality in Flint. When asked what are the major environmental impacts of the state of Michigan, they said repeatedly, it was global warming. That's where everybody was distracted towards. We have to get back to the basics. And the basic of all basic is the thing that sustains our life. And that is clean, pure drinking water. Yes, we have to make sure that to reduce the pollutant load in our atmosphere. Too much of anything is not good. But pollution itself is the problem. I mean, we need CO2. Every time we exhale CO2. But too much of it can cause major problems. So we have to reduce the impact of pollution, all pollution, into our atmosphere. But in order for our species to be around 100 years from now, to be able to look back and see how successful we were in reducing the pollutant load in our atmosphere, we have to make sure our water is okay. And we're not doing a very good job of that. So the first of your 4 assignments is to take a water quality sample from inside your house, take it to a lab, and find out what's in it. And let us know the results, or if you have any questions, or you need anything interpreted, or any of the information that you might need to ensure the water quality in your home for you and your family. Your work will result in questions. Let us know your questions and concerns, and we'll provide you with the links to direct you to the information you need to prepare yourself to take action. Unfortunately, unless you do something, it's not going to get done.
But state public health workers were not much help.
We were told by the state nurse, it's just a few IQ points. It's not the end of the world.
She said that to you?
Yes.
Just like that?
Just like that.